Welcome to our podcast, Talk to Me, Sister. I'm Cathey.
And I am Sarah, and we are twin sisters documenting our surrogacy journey, discussing women's health, motherhood, and all the details that led us here.
Our mission is to not only educate and inform, but to spread joy and hope through our story. Thanks for following along.
Sauceda is a registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in mindfulness and gut health. Amanda quickly realized that gut health is more than just digestion, the microbiome, and the foods we eat. It's also about honoring our gut feelings.
This is why she created the Mindful Gut. It is a holistic way of helping people find their gut-friendly foods and lifestyle. Amanda has a virtual private practice where she runs group programs. P.S. Her favorite food is pizza. So we love her already.
Love pizza.
Love pizza. We're excited for you guys to listen to this episode with Amanda.
Can't wait.
So good to meet you. I like your background. It's like opal.
Oh, thank you.
Love it. I know, it's so radiant.
Zoom.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much. I know you're a busy lady. Thanks for meeting with us today and talking about all of this fun stuff. It's fun to see you in real life, not on the gram.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm excited.
I know. It's good to connect with you. I'm Sarah, by the way. I'm Cathey on this side. We're excited to chat with you. Cathey and I just started this podcast a couple months ago. And it's actually been longer than that now. It's like the beginning of the year, January. Was it? Yeah. I guess we started our Instagram later, but we have 15 episodes out and we're advocates for women's health, and gut health is like the number one requested topic. It is.
Right. It's a hot topic.
It is a hot topic. I did an Instagram poll last week, specifically on gut health, because I knew this was coming up and people had requested this episode. And I did a little poll, and it was like talking to the women, like, who has gut issues? And everybody, I think it was like 90% said yes. And so I'm excited to have you on because you're like the guru and we can learn from you today. We have listener questions and all the good stuff. Yes. And I think I told you when we messaged on Instagram that I'm a dietitian also. And my specialty is really like women's health, fertility, postpartum, and the gut has a lot to do with all of that. I'm currently carrying Sarah's baby. I'm Sarah's surrogate. So we just have a couple months left, which is so fun.
Exciting.
It is so exciting. So, but there's only so much. The gut health world continues to evolve, and just like personally in my specialty, it's hard for me to keep up. So I'm like, we need somebody.
Even me, like I think everybody is like really difficult to stay abreast of it all.
It really is, especially gut health. I found that there's a connection, with mental health, of course, and hormones, and just like it's just never ending. So we're really excited to pick your brain. The microbiome tends to be a word that so many people use, and just like we're like, that's a vast word. So we want to know all of the things.
Even a word we haven't quite defined. Yeah, totally.
Well, tell us first, like about how'd you start in gut health? Tell us kind of about your, career path and passion. Like how'd you start with this as your specialty?
It didn't start off that way. It's literally the driving force of becoming a dietitian was rooted in the fact that I love to eat. And it was junior year of high school where where you feel that pressure of, okay, where are you going to go to school? Like, where are you going to apply to next year? What are you going to do?
Right.
And I remember finding out that there was a career of like, oh, there's a dietitian. Like they just talk about food. That was it.
You're like, I'm in. Listen, I totally relate to that. Yeah.
And that's kind of how it happened to become a dietitian. Gut health came later. So where gut health kind of entered the picture was after I had become a dietitian. I had started working mostly actually with like school health, and I was doing more community oriented nutrition. And then I had like family members and then myself had like digestion issues. And that was where the route to gut health started to come about. And even since going into gut health, like my perspective on it has changed, like how I define gut health, I think is a little bit different than how others see it. And so that was how I've like maneuvered into this space.
I think that's so impressive. And also, you're right. It seems like everybody has that issue. And so you just have to probably kind of learn as you go. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure, I'll counsel you on that. Google away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned you have a different definition of gut health than other people. Can you explain kind of your definition of gut health?
Yeah. So at first it was very oriented to digestion and just like, having issues with like bloating and gas and all the not sexy things nobody wants to talk about, but all the things we all experience at one point of our lives, right? We all bloated, constipated,
For sure.
diarrhea, like all of that, right?
Right.
And then where it like moved into this different perspective was realizing that our gut is more than just our digestion. So it's kind of three different aspects that I look at. Digestion is one, the microbiome is another. So kind of we can talk about what that is. And then the third piece that I think brings both of these things together is honoring your gut instinct and your gut feelings. We've all have gut feelings. Like, I know this is the right choice for me, or no, this doesn't feel good for me. I think this is where digestion and microbiome can intersect. And I saw a lot when I was working with women. I worked predominantly with women. And even if it were just like anybody really, when you don't honor like that little voice you have, when you don't honor that gut feeling or gut instinct, sometimes it can manifest with, issues, and it's not always food that could cause digestion issues. It could be how you're feeling. And if you're doing things that aren't in alignment with what your core values are, that could be a contributor to indigestion issues. And so I think that is the approach that I like to take that's a little bit different. And it's more of like that mindfulness protocol, like mindful gut approach is where I'm trying to find the balance between all of these three things.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a lot too about people listening to their bodies for the first time. I think we're taught like as women too to dismiss feelings. Oh, you're just hormonal. Oh, you just need this or that and the other. And in turn, you're saying like, let's listen to those. Those are like usually flags that you need to focus on.
And I'm one of those women who've always struggled with gut issues throughout certain parts of my life. And it's interesting when I like look back at certain seasons where I've struggled more than others, like just looking at like stress loads and maybe kind of what I'm feeling in those seasons of life. So I love that perspective. Cathey and I talk a lot about kind of like that mind-body connection. I love that you gave us that definition, because this segues perfectly into the first user question. So you talked about gut feelings. I love that gut health connection to just like the mental health, that gut brain connection. Somebody asked us, does cutting out dairy and gluten, does that help with depression? We've all, I guess that there's been a link, and, people have said that maybe the gluten and the dairy at a certain age can link to kind of mood swings and depression. One, do you think there's a connection there? And two, do you think cutting out dairy and gluten would be a good solution for someone struggling?
Like, you can't see, but she raised her eyebrows. Like, I was like,
we're twins. Do we do the same thing?
I love it. So there's kind of, this is one of the core messages that I always want to get across and to people is that what works for your gut is going to be unique. So for some people, removing dairy and gluten or one or the other may be helpful for them in regards to mood, like depression or digestive issues. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like attractive
Specific.
To do that.
Okay.
It's specific too. It's like specific and attractive because dairy and gluten are common things that can irritate people. They're very common, food intolerances or sensitivities that people will have, and they're actually also common allergies, right? But it's not going to be across the board for people and so that's like, to answer the second part of your question, should somebody remove it? I wouldn't recommend removing it off the bat. That would not be my first recommendation. My first recommendation would actually be to do a food and mood journal to get an idea of what's working for you now and what isn't. And another thing, to kind of backtrack a little bit on the gluten part, it could be not sensitivity, it could be celiac disease. And if someone were to have, celiac disease, removing gluten would make diagnosing the celiac even more difficult. So recap, start with the food and mood journal. I think get to know what is working for you and what isn't working for you. Build off of there. Know that it could be removing dairy and gluten. That may be helpful for mood. The big thing too with food sensitivities is how much and how often. So playing around with those two variables could be more of an impact, because let's be real, dairy and gluten are amazing and they taste so good.
Yeah. Pizza.
And there you go. Pizza.
Yeah. We loved your bio included that.
Yeah.
So I like that you mentioned that people who are doing a celiac test, you need to be, if you're not eating gluten, your intolerance won't show up because there's no inflammation of that marker, right? Mm-hmm. So how long do you need to be eating gluten? Do you like to test positive if you do have celiac disease?
Yeah, I'd have to look. I think the last I had looked at that, because I haven't looked at the updated guidelines in a while. And the last I looked, I don't know if there even was an established
everybody's probably different. I would assume everybody's probably different, because I feel like it takes 6 weeks or so to get it out of your diet. So it would make sense, like, to get it out of your system ish. So it makes sense that it takes a pretty significant amount of time for you to show an intolerance as well. Interesting. We'll include it. We'll look it up, everybody.
I know. I was like,
show notes.
I think May is Celiac Awareness Month, I think, too.
We'll look.
There was a dietitian. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's funny. I'm going to say this about gluten, because I really felt like I was intolerant to it for so long. Mm-hmm. And I decided to cut it out when I was on my plant-based diet kick. Now I introduce a little bit more meats here and there that are grass-fed, but now I feel like in the last year I can tolerate it. So I'm like, I don't know if my gut just needed a break from it, or if maybe maybe it was something else beside gluten, and I just was like, oh, I'm gluten, I have celiac. It was just like an easy, it could have been a million other things, but I feel like it was just an easy trend to say, oh, I'm gluten-free, so I don't know.
Yeah. It kind of like goes back to what you mentioned a little bit ago about like seasons. There's different seasons in our life, and your body changes daily. It's not a static thing. And so you can tolerate things better. And who's to say, what your environment was like, or maybe your gut was like, and it's hard to pinpoint, unfortunately.
Right.
But it's comforting to know that when it comes to intolerances and sensitivities, there can be seasons, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to avoid it for life.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I talked to actually a client about this last night who we're actually trying to get to eat more, and he has cut out, he'd avoided dairy for a long time and then added it back in slowly and is tolerating it better. So sometimes I'll tell that to people too. It's like, of course, if you avoid dairy for a month and then have an ice cream cone, like, you're not going to feel good.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
So it is like building up a tolerance. Like, you have digestive enzymes and everything that supports that, right? So I think that's a good point to make too, is like, if you avoid something and then add it back in immediately, which I think is the food journal idea, is that you're kind of tracking those things. That's
and I will say the best thing that you can do for your gut is variety. Like, and that's one of the hardest things I've seen people struggle with, is getting in a variety of things. I mean, I struggle, like I get it.
Yeah.
But your gut loves variety.
I love that. Well, good. So this is great. So next question is similar, but we do see that, especially women, it seems like everybody has IBS or a digestive issue, and that's more common, or maybe we're just talking about it more. Like Sarah said,
that could be too. Yeah,
it could be that people are like, let's talk about, more comfortable talking about our bowel movements or something. But it does seem like it is, it's a prominent issue, specifically in the female world. I know that there's hormone connections. It's like everybody experiences the digestive changes that happen like around your period, or like when you're pregnant. Like clearly there's a hormonal connection there. Also, I think we're stressed and all the things. So what do you feel like is the connection between like all of the women having IBS?
What's up with that? Why is everyone having issues?
What's wrong with us, Amanda?
And that's why when you asked me earlier, when I was like, the majority of my clients are women, I was like, that's kind of
like, I'm so busy because they're all women.
And I think it's for all those reasons you've just mentioned. I think part of, and I don't think anybody knows exactly. There's no like, this is the reason why, this is the research. There's so many different perspectives to this. It could be because women, definitely that hormonal piece to it. I think that's definitely a big part of that, especially in regards to the menstrual cycle and your period, and how hormones fluctuate during different parts of the cycle. That can contribute to looser bowel movements, or it could contribute to, more of that constipation type of bowel movement. I think that it could also be so many, I don't know, like I feel think that's like a big part of it.
Yeah, I feel like too, we're living in a world maybe where foods maybe are more processed, or like Cathey and I talk about like marketing too. Like there's a lot of things labeled like healthy, and it's like Cathey always talks about eating, what do you say, low to the ground? Some cute little remark.
Something cute like that.
I mean, like, fruits and vegetables, but there's things that are marketed as healthy and good for your gut that are maybe like more overly processed. I don't know. Maybe that could be one.
That kind of brings me a really popular thing that I see is like the acai bowls, and I think the acai bowls, taste amazing, but then I like wonder how much like sugar is, like added sugars in the acai bowls, and all that fruit,
like
and then
honey and
run to the bathroom,
chocolate.
All that fruit is like, making you your stomach upset, even though it's fruit and it's like great, but a concentrated amount, especially if you're not used to that, can make your stomach upset. But it is like one of those things you mentioned that's kind of like, oh, it's like healthy, or
that's a great example.
That's a great example, because it is like all sugar. I got an acai bowl recently, and it was like coconut shavings, shaved chocolate on the top, nuts, and like drizzled with honey.
Sounds amazing.
I was like, it actually was. It was like dessert, but but like what some people deem healthy is like, maybe why is this like all this sugar at once, just making my stomach in knots?
Yeah, everybody's different. And I will say too, like a lot of the gluten-free trends, like I'll make gluten-free cookies, gluten-free bread, gluten-free this, and they're pretty low in fiber, right? So like that's an important, like they're not any better for you unless you have a gluten issue. It's crazy.
It's that health halo, right? Like we kind of assume these things are better because that's how it's been marketed to us, but in reality it's not always the case, unless you have a reason or a need to, or maybe you just, oh my God, I'm not gluten-free, but there's this gluten-free bakery that I go to all the time, and they have this one cookie that I absolutely love, and it's a dipped mint cookie that kind of tastes like a Girl Scout Thin Mint, but better in my opinion. And like like I'm gonna pay more for it. It's and I'm not gluten-free, but like I love it. So maybe it just tastes like it. That could be a reason.
It's back to your encouragement to people, which is like, eat what's for you, listen to your body, because generally that's telling you more than the nutrition trends. For sure. I love that.
Hey guys, we are excited to share with you our new partnership with Your Superfoods. Not only do they have great tasting product, but they are on a mission to help improve people's health through the power of plants.
I fell in love with their superfood and plant protein mixes after I was diagnosed and started my lifestyle change. One of the founders is also a cancer survivor, which is why I came across their story. I make a ton of smoothies, and my daughter Charlotte loves them too. Your Superfoods is 100% plant-based, no sweeteners, no soy, no dairy, gluten-free, and non-GMO.
So you can purchase with our code SISTER15 and you will receive 15% off your purchase, any purchase, not just your first one. So go to yoursuper.com and use the code SISTER15, SISTER15 for 15% off your order.
Go grab your superfoods.
Will you explain to us, it's hard to do, yeah. Will you explain to us what in the world the microbiome is?
Please. I hear this word all the time. And I'm sitting here with a nutritionist. I have questions up here in my notes. Number one on my list was, what the heck is microbiome?
Let's start there. So let me try to give a good example of this. Have you ever taken an antibiotic and have noticed that your stomach is like where did that come from? Like, why is my stomach a little weird? Right? So when we take an antibiotic, what happens is it kills off the bad bacteria that's like making you sick for whatever reason, right? But it also kills off good bacteria, and that good bacteria lives in what we call our microbiome. So in our large intestine, we all naturally have a bunch of different types and amounts of bacteria that live here. And this is what we commonly refer to as our microbiome. Just this like little ecosystem that is within the large intestine. Here's the thing about the microbiome is there is no concrete definition that is all accepted of what bacteria should be there, how much of the bacteria should be there. Because there's also going to be bacteria that might not be might quote unquote be bad or not so great, but it's in lower amounts, so it's not an issue. We don't know what is like the accepted threshold of the different, bacteria types and amounts. So that's where I think a lot of confusion comes in. We all know we want a healthy microbiome because those bacteria actually have jobs and responsibilities and benefits for your overall health that we're still also learning about. Think of the microbiome like the wild west. We kind of know what's there, but we don't know exactly, we're still learning.
Yeah.
So for example, some of the things that the microbiome might do is be helpful for your bone health, which I think is fascinating.
That is fascinating.
With hunger hormones. So I'm rambling a little bit, but yes, that's
we want you to ramble.
Question. I hope that helps.
Yes,
I'm learning so much. So, you said it's kind of like the Wild West. We know, we kind of know. Is there a way for me? I'm interested in my microbiome now.
Yeah.
How do I know if I have enough or a good environment for is there a way to test it? Did you explain?
There's different tests. Yeah, there's different microbiome tests that are out there. And the hard part is there, like I said, there's no widely accepted definition of what those bacteria should be and how much. Okay. So even if you were to do a test, it's kind of cool. And don't get me wrong, I've done a lot of stool tests in my life because I find all of this fascinating. I can't tell you how many times I've had to collect my poop and send it into a
I think that's honestly fascinating.
Yeah, I was gonna say, tell us about it.
Yeah, tell us everything.
First of all, if you do one of these tests, know that collecting your poop really isn't a big deal, because usually they'll give you a kit. Because if that's what you're worried about, because I think that could be a very common concern, ew, gross, I don't want to be touching my poop. You're not. Usually what they do is they give you a little scooper and you just anyway, maybe I'm getting too far.
No, that's important. No, that's important for people who are listening. We have kids, and so we're like I'm still wiping poopy bottoms. So
yeah, where the barriers are down over here, but yeah, we wanted to know.
People want to know though, because that sounds weird. So you just get a little scoop, you put it in, and you ship it off, right?
You ship it off, you put it in a little tube, and then you flush away the rest, and you're good to go. And the test, usually what they'll do is they'll give you reports back, depending on, there's a bunch of different companies that are out there doing different testing. And usually get a report back, and it lists different types of the bacteria that are present that they found in there and the amounts. Now, some people, what's an imbalance and what's not depends on which company you use for the test. Now, there are certain companies that might give you some guidance on different strains of bacteria that might be too high and might be indicative of an imbalance. Some other companies might just list the different strains and the amounts that they were able to quantify. So it really kind of depends on the company that you go with. But it's, like I said, really fascinating. There's other markers they might look at. It's like inflammation could be a marker that they're looking at. How much fat is present in your poop. Ideally, you don't want a lot of fat present. We should be absorbing the majority of fat that we're eating. So they might look at that. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of different things that you are able to find, right?
Yeah. So also about testing, I have a question for you, because I don't know exactly what to tell people when it comes to this, but like food sensitivity test, you can get them on like Groupon and Amazon. Like, are those legit?
Don't do it.
Like, don't do it. Okay. Amanda says don't do it. So tell us what you
plug some good ones because now I'm interested about my microbiome. Plug some good food sensitivity tests, and maybe just
if you have ones that you can mention. If not, don't worry. But
for food sensitivity, or like the microbiome ones, because those would be two different things.
Maybe both.
Let's do microbiome first, and then let's talk about food sensitivity.
Okay. So the microbiome one, I think a very popular company would be GImap, and I forget what the name of the company is, but GImap is the test that you'll see. GImap, that's one. Another one is a company, full disclosure, I worked with, so there is that sponsorship relationship.
Good. Well, honestly, we love that. We'll link it so people can find that.
We'll link it in the show notes.
If you like it, we like it. So
the Zoe is the one that I recently just did. And what I liked about Zoe is they did a microbiome test. So I sent in my poop. This is the one I've done most recently. And they also test two other markers, which I find fascinating to give you more of a holistic view of your overall health. They test blood lipids. So I had to prick my finger, which that was the hardest part for me, to be honest, because I hate blood and needles. But it was pretty easy. You prick your finger, and they will do some blood lipid testing. They have some challenges. They have you eat specific muffins with the specific formulation, and that's why they're pricking your finger, because they're testing based off of this like standard muffin that you've eaten. And then the other marker that they test is your blood sugar. So I wore a continuous glucose monitor for 2 weeks.
Oh no! I think I saw that on your stories. That you were kind of documenting that. I think that is so fun. I want to do that.
I was going to say, it makes me want to do it too.
Yeah.
It is really, really interesting to kind of see. And I mean, just to highlight how foods affect you differently. Like I ate something like cereal. Oh my God, cereal was the one thing I ate. And I added like nuts and berries to like make it more of a fiberful, more of an oomph to it, and still my blood sugar like shot up sky high and like dropped. And I was like, okay, obviously even with like the nuts and the berries that I added, if I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm still gonna eat cereal because I like cereal, but like now I know if I want something long lasting, like that's not the ideal thing for me. Wow. But you could eat it. You could eat the berries and nuts in the cereal. It might be totally fine. So like, that's what I just find so interesting about blood sugar and gut health. It's so individual. But yeah, so those are the two I'd recommend for
perfect
microbiome.
And then the food sensitivity test, like, is it just bad? It's probably better to just keep a food journal, right?
If you want to do something now to figure out like what is triggering my issues or want to get a baseline, food and mood journal. Even when you're doing food sensitivity testing, you would do a food and mood journal, because there's no test out there that's going to be 100% accurate, because what's done in the lab isn't necessarily always going to be representative of what's happening in your body like right now, right? Because we know it's not just food, it's also mood. But like the Groupon things, like don't do it, don't waste your money, like just save it.
Noted.
And I want to point out why oftentimes those tests are considered IgG tests. And IgG is one marker that we can look at to see how somebody responds to food. What's interesting though is that marker doesn't necessarily reflect an intolerance or sensitivity. And so that's often what you see in those Groupon tests that are insanely cheap, or those Instagram ads that are so targeted to you. I mean,
So targeted.
I'm sure we're all going to get an Instagram ad.
Yeah, all
our
the friends
friends
listening. It's so crazy.
It is.
Right?
Well,
So
we talked a
that's-
little bit. We talked a little bit about like why we have gut issues. I know in a second we want to talk about like ways to heal the gut and have a happy gut. But a question I have as just like a normal woman consumer, when I've had gut issues in the past, like that first little thing is like, are you taking a probiotic? Take a probiotic.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about a probiotic, but also will you tell me, and Cathey too, like what is the difference between a probiotic and a prebiotic? Because when I go shop for one at the store, I see both. And I'm like, do I need both? And what's the difference? So let's talk about pre and probiotics.
So think of your gut like a garden, okay? Your gut is a garden. There's two steps to it. You want to seed it and you want to feed it. So seeding your gut would be like taking the probiotics, like the actual bacteria that is going to be living there. Feeding it would be food for that bacteria, which would be what a prebiotic is. So it's not actually going to be those gut bacteria living there. It's going to be food for that gut bacteria. And usually there's different supplement sources that you could do for a prebiotic. And there's also foods that are prebiotic. And there's also foods that are probiotic, or you could also do a supplement. So feed is the bacteria. Seeding, or wait, oh my God, now I'm back. Pretend you didn't hear that. Everyone.
We got an editor.
Rewind. Okay. So feeding would be that prebiotic food, those prebiotic fibers, and seeding would be the actual bacteria.
The actual probiotic. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Incredible.
I didn't know that. So like for someone who hasn't taken a normal probiotic, would it be beneficial to like buy those together and start those together?
My always like general recommendation is to try to do food first, because there's going to be things in the food in addition to that pre or probiotic that you can't just get when a supplement. So I really try to emphasize doing food first. And there's different prebiotic food sources. So for example, two of my favorites are like onions and garlic, because they just add so much flavor to food.
Yummy.
Onions, garlic, oats, apples, green bananas. Those are also some of the prebiotic foods. And then probiotic foods, those can be a little bit harder. Like I didn't grow up eating probiotic foods. I didn't even know what a probiotic food was, but like
I still don't know. Educate me.
So these are going to be things like, for example, yogurt is probably one of the most common probiotic foods.
Yes.
So doing like a cultured yogurt, and it doesn't have to be cow's milk based. It can also be a plant based. So like I've been trying some coconut yogurts because I've been interested in coconut yogurt. And I've been trying a couple different really good ones, and they've been really like creamy, which I really like in a yogurt.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to find a good non-dairy yogurt.
I know. That's not just like tons and tons of ingredients, and it's like ultra
sugar.
processed.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So those have probiotics in there because they're fermented as well.
You want to make sure that on the label it says it has like live active cultures.
Okay,
that will be your clue. That's what you want to look for.
That's great to know, because some people can't get that type of probiotic in their diet. One of our dairy thing.
I was just remembering one of our poll questions. They were like, I'm trying fermented foods because they said that's like taking a probiotic, and I'm eating so much sauerkraut. Nothing's working. So
I love
is sauerkraut like on the list? Is she doing right?
Sauerkraut is on the list. She's right. Sauerkraut's on the list. Kimchi would be on the list too, depending on how you pickle, like your pickles. Pickles could be on the list depending on how they were made, if they were like lacto fermented. Yeah, those would be some examples of some like probiotic foods. I'm just curious, like I'm wondering why she was eating the sauerkraut, and like, because you sometimes straight up, honestly, you won't feel different.
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah, you won't.
I feel like
especially if you don't gut issues, like you won't.
Yeah, I feel like it's easier to get prebiotic foods in your diet than probiotics. You know, like for me, I'm like, I'm just gonna take my probiotic because it's harder to include those in my diet. But yeah, I used to give my kids sauerkraut juice. I know it's kind of savage.
Did they eat that?
Yeah, I just gave it to them in a syringe, honestly. And when they were sick and things like that, because especially when they're little, it's so important to build their microbiome and their gut health and everything. And I just knew that the sauerkraut juice has a lot of good things in it. So I would just, and they wouldn't do it, but when they're little and like, they don't care. They would, I know, it's like,
I love that.
They would be like,
I didn't
super
know that
sour.
you did that. That's so cute.
Yeah.
So we know that probiotics and those kind of foods help have a happy gut. What are your, like, can you give us your three, like the top 3 recommendations for just overall healing your gut?
I would definitely say not everyone needs to heal their gut, and chances are you probably don't. I think gut healing is a really common thing that gets thrown around, that makes you feel like something is wrong with you, and chances are you're probably just fine. So that I definitely want to say.
That's an interesting take.
I love that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Like,
But
don't stress. That's going to cause gut health.
Yeah.
Don't stress about your gut health.
I like, even like the anxiety of like thinking about that could just, I mean, we've all felt that like pit in our stomach. Oh my God, there's this squirrel I almost ran over in my neighborhood, and I was like, oh, I can't run over the squirrel. And you know, like I felt like that drop in my stomach. That's like the mind gut connection. And I think sometimes we get so lost in the gut health hype of all the things we should be doing and healing our gut, when chances are the basics is what's going to keep you grounded. The basics, and staying consistent with that is going to be the most powerful thing you can do. So 3 things I think to help with that, you know, staying the consistent, is variety. I'm going to emphasize that again. So a tip that I like to give is, I mean, we all grew up eating, like, you know, we all had like a repertoire of different fruits and veggies that we grew up eating. Chances are that repertoire is now what it is as an adult. Like, you've probably stuck with very similar things. So the next time you go to the grocery store or farmer's market or whatever, pick up a fruit or vegetable you've never had before and take it home with you, but only take one at a time, because sometimes our eyes are bigger than our stomach, and then it rots in the back of the fridge and you're like, damn,
that's
done something.
That's a great practical tip for variety.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, baby steps, because not only do you want to have variety, it's the staying consistent with it that is going to be really helpful. I think another tip to help with that goes to like the mind gut connection. One really practical thing you can do is to put yourself in a rest and digest mode. So if you are not in a resting state, your digestion is not going to be optimal. So like I said, this is where it goes to, it might not even be the food. It could be the fact that you just were extremely stressed when you're eating, or extremely busy and rushing when you're eating. So take like 3 deep belly breaths, or just 3 deep, like just 3 breaths where you like set that intention.
Yes.
Right. I wanted to, but I was talking.
I just feel like I did it. Yeah. So
that's a great recommendation. You're like telling your stomach.
Yeah. It's time to get started. Guys, we're here to eat. And it'll just help to optimize your digestion, and actually has nothing to do with the food you're eating, but the state you want to put yourself in. Those would be the top 2. I'm trying to think of another like really, really good tip that can help with your gut. There's like so many, like my mind is like spinning.
It's hard to say the top 3.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I feel like your message is very much like de-stressing in certain moments where you feel like your gut is like tensing because of stress. Like, is there any ways, you know, exercise or de-stressing or anything that you feel like is like a bigger picture idea of like calming the gut?
Yes, that's really good. I'm glad you said that. It kind of brings 2 points to mind that kind of relate to that. One thing is the underrating of movement for your body and for your gut. I think that like movement in any way or shape or form, whether that be yoga, walking, running, which I hate, but like people love. I'm still waiting for that runner's high.
Yeah. Me too.
I will forever be waiting for that. Any type of movement will help get things moving literally in your digestive system. And with constipation being such a very, very common thing that many women don't talk about, but many women have, movement really helps get your intestines going, helps things literally move inside. So I would definitely say that. And another thing to kind of go back to what you mentioned with like general, like de-stress, bigger picture, a lot of stress and anxiety from what I've seen is people getting lost in the things of all the things we should be doing. And a lot of those things that we should be doing are things we aren't doing already. So what I would help people, or what I would remind people is, and that's again, something you can do in the food and mood journal, what is working for you now? What are things that you are doing that are positive, that benefit you both physically and mentally, that you can build on? What can you use as a springboard for something else that maybe you want to bring into your life that's a beneficial, healthy behavior for you? I think knowing that you're most likely already doing things that are beneficial for your gut health, build off of that. I think that would be my last one.
Yeah, that's great. Because then you can look back. I think we keep those food journals and mood journals to identify, bad days, but it's so important. I'm so glad you said that. It's so important to look back and go, what are my good days? What was I doing on my good days?
Yeah.
That helps me.
One of these.
I think that's so great. Well, thank you. Those tips are realistic and actionable, and I'm a fan of all of that. Okay, so I have a question. So Sarah was like, okay, the second you mentioned to your physician or whoever that you have gut health, they're like, take a probiotic, eat fiber, eat vegetables, eat fruit.
Yeah.
So we always talk about the foods we can add in, which honestly, I love. Let's always talk about adding in food.
Yeah.
That's our plan. But we do want to know, there are foods that can disrupt your microbiome. And are there like kind of the top few that we should be cautious with, that are kind of more harmful to our gut health? Or is it just...
Two things come to mind that can be pretty across the board with people. Because like I said, food sensitivities can be dependent person to person, and that could interrupt things. But two things that can be pretty general to everybody would be like things that are super ultra processed. Not to say you can never eat a Cheeto in your life, or Doritos are my favorite chip, but like not wanting your diet to be full of the majority of it being like ultra processed foods. Those types of things you want to be wary of. Another thing that could be kind of harmful or disruptive, if done consistently, it would be more of like those like artificial sugars. So certain artificial sugars could be more of an issue for people.
Like
there was a funny
and things like that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like most people think they're doing themselves a favor by adding Splenda or stevia, but actually you feel like those could have a negative effect on your gut.
They could, maybe not so much like the stevia, maybe similar to the other ones. I can picture like the little
equals
packet
aspartame.
Yes, there you go. There we go.
What is the one that's in the pink, the Sweet and Low?
Yeah.
I'm like, how is this still on the market? I thought this got banned. Sweet and Low.
I think so.
Yeah, those are the types of things. So maybe not so much more like the stevia, but like those ones that you just mentioned, like the equal, the aspartame. Those are the things that you ideally, want to not be eating so much of, because they could be disruptive of the microbiome. So that's I would be like two things that are kind of across the board.
That's perfect. Okay, we have one more question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I don't know what you feel about this, but our mom used to work at a health and wellness spa, and they performed colon hydrotherapy, which is like the technical term, aka colonics. And we had a lot of women on the Insta kind of chime in and say, tell us about colonics. Are they good? Are they bad? I know you mentioned constipation being like a trend nowadays, and just having that kind of backed up colon. Are you a fan of colonics or no? What do you think?
Not really.
Okay.
It's so funny because right before, like this morning, I was looking at somebody who was offering colonics, like someone on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Like very popular. It's very, very popular. And this person was a huge fan of it, and found it helpful for people. I don't really see the need. I'm not won over on colonics, and I think here's why I'm not like won over on colonics, because sometimes I think people use it as a band-aid, like I haven't been eating great and I'm just gonna do this to clean myself out and just go back. That's why I'm like such a big proponent of like getting the basics down and staying with that consistent, because if you do that, then you probably won't need a colonic. Another
Let's
reason,
get to the root of it.
you know,
why do you need the colonic? Let's fix that first.
Yeah, that's like pretty much why. And also because you're going to be clearing out things, obviously, like that's the whole purpose of a colonic, is to clear out things. And it's not just going to be like fecal matter and bacteria that's going to cleaned out. It's like the good stuff is going to get cleaned out too. So that's another reason, you know, it's not just the bad things that we think. Like it's kind of cool in a gross way to like see things leave, I guess, but it's not just bad stuff that would be leaving. So that's another reason too why I'm like not sold on it.
That's great. That's good. You're right. Yeah, you don't want to do something that your body isn't supposed to be doing. The two of us just recorded an episode on detoxing and like what that really means, and kind of the same topic, but it's like, let's just prioritize the way our bodies were naturally built to excrete things, like, you know, eating fiber and drinking water and, you know, supporting your microbiome and all of the things you've mentioned. Well, we have loved learning from you, and we're so excited to have this conversation and hopefully answer some people's questions. You've answered our questions. So
I love it. You've given us some good nuggets of truth, honestly. And I love like the overall message is like listen to our guts, and also pinpoint like why our guts are doing certain things versus like just the colonic thing. It's like, it does not, when you said the word band-aid, I'm like, it is kind of like a band-aid. Like why are we trying to get to the colonic anyway? But
I think anything with nutrition and exercise and gut health, it's hard work, and two, it takes time.
Right.
And like, even me, like I want like something to happen fast, even though in my mind, I know it's going to take time for our gut to us to have, if we're constipated, for us to figure out why and to figure out the issue. And so we want like fast.
I know. I think that's like us as a culture too. Like we just want no gut. We want no gut issues. We want like an empty colon, and we want to just move on to the lifestyle that we already have. But I love your message, and I love everything. Like you gave us some good food for thought, and I'm going to go get my food sensitivity journal started.
Do it.
My mood journal.
Oh, I have a template coming out for it. I can
Oh, you do? Okay, yeah. On that note, tell people like how they can connect with you, your Instagram, your your offerings, your blog. Tell us where they can keep an eye out for that new food journal.
So I've been teasing a new freebie coming out for a little while, and it's going to be coming out actually next week. But so depending on when this airs, I'm sure it'll already be out. And it's a new food and mood journal that I created to help kind of give you some guidance on trying to figure this out and what should I, record. So that's coming out a template. The easiest place to find me is Instagram. So you can find me at guthealth.nutritionist. And the new freebies coming out. Instagram, I'm pretty active on that. I find a lot of different infographics. If you ever have suggestions for topics you want to learn about, you are more than welcome to message me. I'm always open to that. And I have another thing that I'll be coming out with is a new group program called the Mindful Gut, to help you figure out and get to know what's working for your gut and give you space to learn and put all of this stuff, like you said, into action and learn how to be consistent with it. And that is it. Yeah, that's where you can find me and my stuff.
That's great, Amanda. Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of group programs because I do think it's less intimidating. You feel less alone. Well, thank you so much for taking time today. We will be in touch for sure.
If you have been listening along to the pod, you know we love high quality vitamins that are worth your time and your money. Seeking Health vitamins are our favorite because they are not synthetic and they are easily absorbable. We have a new coupon code exclusive to our audience. It's 10% off your first order from seekinghealth.com. So use our code TalkToMeSister for 10% off. That's talk2 with the number 2, me sister, for 10% off. We will link all of this information in the show notes. Enjoy!